transport ship arrived in silence, drifting through the pale light of the outer docking ring like a ghost that did not wish to be seen. No celebration waited for it. No music, no banners, no cheering crowds. The war had ended only 3 weeks earlier, and peace still felt like a fragile rumor that might vanish if anyone spoke too loudly. Captain Elias Rook stood alone on the observation platform above the landing bay, hands clasped behind his back, watching the vessel settle into its berth. The metal beneath his boots still carried faint scorch marks from the final battle, marks the engineers had not yet polished away. He preferred it that way. Clean metal felt dishonest. He had been told this moment was an honor, a symbol of victory, proof that humanity had survived the Dominion. It did not feel like victory. The air in the bay shifted as pressure doors opened. Soldiers in dark ceremonial uniforms moved into position with quiet precision. No one spoke. Even the usual whispers were gone. Everyone knew what the ship carried. A war bride. The words tasted wrong every time Elias heard them. He had commanded fleets, watched worlds burn, signed orders that sent friends to their deaths. Yet this simple political ritual disturbed him more than any battle. The Alliance Council claimed it was tradition among the Varelians, a guarantee of peace between former enemies. A noble exchange of trust. To Elias, it looked too much like ownership. The transport ramp lowered with a slow, mechanical breath. White vapor spilled across the floor, curling around armored boots. For a long moment, nothing moved inside the ship. The silence stretched thin, almost painful. Then she appeared. 2 Dominion attendants stepped forward first, tall and silver-skinned, their movements perfectly synchronized. Between them walked a single figure wrapped in pale ceremonial cloth that shimmered like moonlight on water. Chains hung from her wrists. They were not rough iron restraints like the kind used in human prisons. These were delicate, almost beautiful, formed from smooth dark metal that caught the light in soft blue lines. Symbols ran along their length in a language Elias could not read. Beauty did not make them less cruel. She walked without resistance, each step calm and measured, as if the chains weighed nothing at all. When the vapor cleared, Elias saw her face clearly for the first time. She looked young, not like a child, but untouched by the exhaustion he saw in every mirror. Her skin held the faint silver glow common to her species, and her eyes were an unfamiliar shade somewhere between violet and deep blue. They were steady, not frightened, not angry, simply watchful, as if she were studying the world that had defeated her people. A Dominion official began to read the formal transfer declaration in a smooth, emotionless voice. The words echoed across the metal walls, full of promises, obligations, and warnings disguised as diplomacy. Elias barely listened. His attention stayed on the chained woman standing below. She did not look at the soldiers. She did not look at the officials. She looked only at him. The realization came slowly, like cold water rising. Of course she was looking at him. He was the one meant to receive her. The council had chosen him because he was respected, disciplined, unlikely to cause a political scandal. They believed he would follow the ritual without question. The declaration ended. Silence returned. All eyes turned to Elias. This was the moment he was supposed to step forward, accept the chains, and complete the symbol of peace. A simple gesture that would be recorded, broadcast, and studied by historians who had never smelled burning cities. He began to walk. Each step felt heavier than the armor he had worn in war. The distance across the landing bay was not far, yet it stretched like a road between 2 different lives. When he finally stopped in front of her, he was close enough to see the faint tremor in the chain links as the ship's engines cooled behind them. Up close, the symbols on the metal glowed softly, pulsing in a rhythm almost like breathing. He did not like that. The Dominion attendant extended the chain toward him in formal offering. Elias did not take it. Instead, he looked directly at the woman. For a heartbeat, nothing existed except the quiet space between their eyes. He expected hatred. He expected fear. He found neither. What he saw instead was something far more unsettling. Relief. The feeling struck him so strongly he almost stepped back. Why would a prisoner look relieved to see the officer of the species that had defeated her world? The attendant cleared their throats softly, a polite reminder that ceremony was being delayed. Cameras were recording, councils were watching. Elias made his choice before he fully understood it. He reached past the offered chain and unlocked it. A small mechanical click sounded far louder than it should have. The metal loosened, the glowing symbols dimmed, and the restraint slid free from her wrists into his hand. Gasps moved through the soldiers like a sudden wind. Someone shifted their stance. One of the Dominion attendants took a sharp step forward before stopping, clearly unsure whether protocol allowed intervention. Elias ignored them all. The woman's hands were free now, pale against the cold air of the bay. Faint marks circled her wrists where the metal had rested, not wounds, but impressions left by long pressure. Freedom should have brought relief. Instead, fear flooded her face so quickly it felt like watching sunlight vanish behind a storm. She leaned closer to him, movement so small the watching crowd might not notice. Her voice, when it came, was barely louder than breath. "You should not have done that." The words were calm, but something inside them trembled. Elias kept his own voice low. "You are not a prisoner here." Her eyes widened slightly, not in gratitude, but in alarm. "You do not understand," she whispered. For the first time, he saw real emotion break through her composure. Not anger, not pride. Fear. Deep, certain, familiar. The kind carried by people who had learned that safety could vanish without warning. Behind them, officials were beginning to murmur. The ceremony had already gone wrong. Political damage was spreading in quiet ripples Elias could not yet see. Now, he should have restored the chains. He knew that. A single motion could repair the moment, return everything to the expected script. He did not move. The woman's gaze flicked briefly toward the watching Dominion attendants, then back to him. Her voice dropped even softer, each word shaped with careful urgency. "Please," she said, "do not let them know." The request confused him. "Know what? That I am free." The sentence settled between them like falling ash. Elias felt the weight of it without fully understanding why. Freedom was supposed to be a gift, a victory, something worth celebrating. Yet she spoke of it like a danger, a warning. He studied her face again, searching for deception, manipulation, anything that would make this simpler. He found only truth. Slowly, carefully, he closed his hand around the loose chain so the watching crowd could not see that it was no longer attached. To distant eyes, the ritual might still look complete. For now. The officials resumed speaking, eager to repair the ceremony's rhythm. Formal words filled the air again, pretending nothing unusual had happened. Cameras kept recording. History kept moving. But inside the quiet space between two strangers, something had already changed. Elias did not yet know her name. He did not know her past, her rank, or the secrets hidden behind those steady violet eyes. He knew only one thing with absolute certainty. The war was over, and somehow the most dangerous part had just begun. The corridor outside the landing bay felt colder than the open vacuum of space. Captain Elias Rook walked in silence, the sound of his boots soft against the metal floor. A few steps behind him, the Varelian woman moved with quiet care, as if every motion had been measured long before this moment. No chains bound her now, yet she held her hands close together, wrists almost touching, like someone who still felt invisible weight around them. Guards followed at a respectful distance. None of them spoke. News of what had happened in the bay was already spreading through the station like a slow electrical current. By the time they reached the command level, everyone would know the human captain had broken ceremony with the Dominion. Elias did not look back to see if she was afraid. He could feel it without turning. When they reached a secured door, it opened with a soft tone. Inside waited a private briefing room. Plain walls, a metal table, 2 chairs, nothing decorative. A place made for decisions, not comfort. He stepped aside and allowed her to enter first. She paused at the doorway. For a brief second, uncertainty crossed her face, as if she expected a trap hidden inside the empty room. Only after studying every corner did she move forward. The door sealed behind them, cutting off the distant sounds of the station. Silence settled, thick and complete. Elias placed the loose ceremonial chains on the table. Without the glow, they looked ordinary, almost harmless. That illusion did not last long. The woman's eyes fixed on them immediately. Fear returned, quiet, controlled, but unmistakable. "You may sit," Elias said gently. She did not move toward the chair. "Are we alone?" "Yes." She listened to the air itself, as if silence could lie. Only after several long breaths did her shoulders lower slightly. She sat with careful posture, back straight, hands folded tightly in her lap. Elias remained standing for a moment, studying her. Up close, the calm mask she wore looked thinner. Exhaustion lived beneath it. Not the simple tiredness of travel, but the deep weariness of someone who had been watched for too long. Finally, he sat across from her. "You asked me not to let them know you were free," he said. "Explain." Her gaze stayed on the chains, because freedom is not permitted to us. "That war is over." She shook her head once, a small motion. "Not the war you see." The words were simple, but something inside them felt heavy with meaning. Elias leaned back slightly. "Start with your name." She hesitated, as if names carried danger. Then she answered, "Lyra." The sound was soft, almost musical. He repeated it once, quietly, committing it to memory. "Why did you fear the chains being removed, Lyra?" Her fingers tightened together until the skin paled. "Because they protect me." Elias glanced at the metal links on the table. "They are restraints. They are shields." Silence followed. He had seen many strange technologies during the war, but nothing that looked like surrender and acted like protection. "From what?" he asked. She lifted her eyes to meet his. For the first time, the calm control slipped completely, and true fear showed through. "From my own people." The room felt smaller after she said it. Elias kept his voice steady. "You are a noble of the Dominion. You were sent here as a symbol of peace. Yes, that does not explain fear." "In the Dominion," she said slowly, choosing each word with care. "Thought is not private." A quiet understanding began to form, still incomplete but growing darker. "Our rulers hear us," she continued. "They guide us, correct us, silence us when needed." "Psychic control," Elias said. She gave a faint nod. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. Human intelligence reports had suggested something like this, but battlefield rumors were never certain. Hearing it spoken plainly made it real. "And the chains blocked this control?" "Yes." "Then why would your rulers allow them?" "Because a war bride must arrive obedient," she said, "but not empty." "The dampeners keep us stable during transfer. After ceremony, they are removed. Connection returns." Elias looked again at the dark metal resting between them. Not jewelry, not symbols, life support. "You knew this would happen when you volunteered," he said. "Yes." "Then why come?" Her answer came almost as a whisper. "Because humans resist." The words carried fragile hope, like a light hidden inside trembling hands. Elias felt the weight of expectations settle on his shoulders. "Resist what?" "The voice," she said. "The will that is not our own." He remembered battlefield moments when Varelian soldiers had fought without fear, without hesitation, even when defeat was certain. At the time, it had looked like perfect discipline. Now it looked like something else. "If what you say is true," he said carefully, "freeing you may have placed you in danger." "It has," Lyra replied. "Then why ask me to hide it instead of restoring the chains?" Her eyes moved to his face again, searching. "Because if you put them back without understanding, you might remove them again where they can see? And that would matter?" "Yes." A long silence stretched between them. Elias realized she was not asking for comfort. She was asking for strategy. "Can they see you now?" he asked. "I do not know," she said. "Distance weakens them. But absence of chains invites attention." He stood slowly and walked to the wall console. With a few commands, he activated a localized signal dampening field, standard privacy protection for high command meetings. Soft blue light shimmered once across the ceiling, then vanished. Lyra inhaled sharply. "They cannot hear through that?" "Nothing leaves this room," Elias said. For the first time since arriving, her shoulders truly relaxed. The change was small, but unmistakable. She looked younger in that moment, almost fragile. "Thank you," she whispered. Gratitude from an enemy felt strange.
"You still haven't answered my question,"
Elias said. "Why volunteer to become a political hostage?" Her gaze lowered again, but not from fear this time. "Because someone had to learn if the stories were true." "What stories?" "That humans choose," she said, "even when choice is painful, even when it is dangerous." Elias had no answer ready for that. Choice was something humans argued about, fought over, wasted, protected. He had never imagined it could look miraculous to someone else. "If the Dominion discovers you are free," he said, "what will they do?" "They will take my mind back," Lyra replied quietly. "And they will learn everything I have seen here." The implication was clear. Security risk. Strategic threat. Possible reason for another war. Elias felt the familiar pressure of command closing in. The cold space where emotion had to step aside for duty. He looked at the chains again. A simple solution rested on the table. Put them back on. Restore safety. Follow protocol. End the problem before it grew. His hand moved slightly toward the metal death, then stopped. During the war, he had followed many simple solutions. Most of them had buried people. He withdrew his hand. "No," he said softly. Lyra looked up, startled. "I will not chain you," he continued. "Not for politics, not for fear." Silence filled the room, deep and uncertain. "You do not understand the risk," she said. "I understand enough," he replied. "And I understand something else." "What?" "If peace requires slavery," Elias said, "then it is only another kind of war." The words hung between them, heavy and unbreakable. Lyra's eyes shone with sudden emotion. She tried and failed to hide. Hope. Real hope, fragile as glass. Before either of them could speak again, a sharp tone cut through the room. The wall console flashed with an incoming priority signal from Station Command. Elias turned toward it, already knowing this moment of quiet was over. He accepted the transmission. An officer's tense face appeared in blue light. "Captain, Dominion envoys are requesting immediate confirmation," the officer said. "They want visual proof the ceremonial restraints remain in place." The room went still. Lyra's hands began to tremble. Elias felt the fragile future balancing on a single decision. Outside this room waited diplomacy, politics, and the shadow of another war. Inside waited a frightened woman who had crossed the stars believing humans might be different. The officer's voice pressed urgently through the speaker. "Captain, we need your response now." Elias looked at the chains, then at Lyra. Slowly, carefully, she slid from her chair to her knees, not in surrender, but in desperate trust. Her voice broke as she spoke. "Please," she whispered, "restrain me again, or they will take my mind." Time seemed to stop inside the quiet room. Lyra remained on her knees, her head slightly lowered, her hands lifted toward him with silent pleading. The fear in her eyes was no longer hidden. It was open, raw, and impossible to ignore. Elias felt the weight of command pressing harder than any battlefield armor. Outside the room, entire governments waited for his answer. Inside, one fragile life waited for his choice. The console continued to flash with the incoming demand for proof. He knew there was no safe path. Every option carried danger. If he placed the chains back on her, he might protect her from the Dominion's psychic reach. But he would also accept the logic of control. He would become part of the system she had tried to escape. If he refused, the Dominion might see it as betrayal. Peace could shatter before it had truly begun. War could return. He looked down at Lyra again. She was shaking now, trying to stay silent, trying not to beg more than she already had. The effort alone told him how much pride she was sacrificing in this moment. Slowly, he crouched in front of her so their eyes were level. "You trust me?" he said quietly. "Yes," she whispered. "Even though I am your enemy." "You are not," she said. "Not if you let me choose." The word struck deeper than she knew. "Choice again." "Always choice." Elias reached toward the table and picked up the dark metal chains. They felt cold, heavier than their size should allow. The faint blue symbols along the links pulsed slowly, like a sleeping heartbeat. A tool of protection, a symbol of slavery, both at once. He hated that truth. The console tone sounded again, sharper this time. The waiting officer's voice followed, tense and urgent. "Captain, the envoys are escalating. They insist on visual confirmation immediately." Elias closed his eyes for one brief second. Then he made his decision. "Give me 1 minute," he said. The transmission cut. Silence returned, but it felt thinner now, stretched tight like glass about to crack. Elias looked at Lyra. "If I do this," he said softly, "it will only be temporary. Do you understand?" "Yes. And when this moment passes, we find another way." Her voice trembled. "I believe you." Carefully, gently, he placed the chains around her wrists again. The metal closed with a quiet click. The blue symbols brightened instantly. Lyra gasped. Relief washed across her face so suddenly it was almost painful to witness. Her breathing slowed. The tight fear in her shoulders loosened. For the first time since he had met her, she looked safe. Elias felt something twist inside his chest. No, one should look relieved to be chained. He stood and reactivated the console transmission. The officer's image returned. "Captain?" Elias stepped slightly aside so the restraints were visible. "Ceremonial protocol remains intact," he said calmly. The officer exhaled in visible relief. "Understood. I will inform the envoys." The screen went dark. The crisis, at least the visible one, had passed. But Elias knew the real problem had only begun. He turned back to Lyra. She was still kneeling, eyes closed, breathing slowly as if listening to distant silence only she could hear. "Can they reach you now?" he asked. She remained still for several seconds before answering. "No," she said quietly. "The dampeners are working." "Then we use this time," Elias replied. "Tell me everything." Lyra opened her eyes, and she began. She spoke of a world where thoughts were guided from birth, where doubt was corrected before it could grow, where loyalty was not chosen but enforced so gently that many never realized it existed. She spoke of the Empress, not as a simple ruler, but as a presence inside every mind, warm, certain, unavoidable, comforting to some, terrifying to others. To be alone in your own thoughts, Lyra said softly, is considered illness among us. Elias listened without interruption. He had seen tyranny before, political, military, economic, but this was deeper. This reached into the last private space a person possessed.
How many resist? He asked. Very few, she said.
And most are quieted. The gentle word carried a dark meaning. And you? I learned to hide, she answered, to obey loudly and question silently. That is dangerous. Yes. Why risk everything now? Because your kind fights even when defeat is certain, she said. We could not understand why. Now I think I do. Why? Because living without choice is not living. Her simple words filled the room with quiet power. Elias felt a strange realization growing, slow, steady, undeniable. This was no longer only about one frightened noble. This was about an entire species that had never truly been free. Before he could respond, a sudden vibration shook the station floor. Small, but wrong. Elias's instincts reacted instantly. He tapped the console. Report. Static answered first. Then, a strained voice. Unidentified Dominion vessel just entered close orbit. No clearance request. No communication. Lyra's face went pale. They came early, she whispered. Another vibration. Stronger this time. Security alarms began to rise in distant corridors. Faint, but growing. Elias's mind shifted into command clarity. Seal diplomatic sectors.
Raise internal defense grid. Do not fire unless fired upon.
Yes, Captain. The channel closed. Silence rushed back in, filled now with approaching danger.
Lyra's chains glowed faintly as her hands trembled. They will take me, she said. Not without a fight, Elias replied. If you fight, peace ends. If I surrender you, freedom ends. The truth stood between them, sharp as a blade. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Lyra did something unexpected. She stood. Slowly, calmly, as if a decision had settled deep inside her. What are you thinking? Elias asked. That this moment was always coming, she said, and that running from it will only make the cost greater. You are not going back to them. She met his eyes with quiet strength. I must. No. If I return willingly, she continued, they will not suspect change. They will bring me close to the Empress. Close enough to matter. Understanding struck like sudden light.
You want to free them, Elias said.
I want to give them silence, she replied. Just once. Long enough to hear themselves. That is not a small risk. It is the only one that means anything. Elias felt the future shifting again, wider now than politics or treaties. This could end control across an empire, or start a war humanity could not survive. Even if I agreed, he said slowly, how would you do it? Lyra looked down at the glowing chains around her wrists. With these, she said. Elias frowned. They only block psychic signals. Yes, she said, but human science changes what it touches. A new thought formed. Dangerous, impossible, brilliant. Reverse the signal. Break the control. Free them all. Before he could speak, the station lights flickered. A deep impact shuddered through the structure. far stronger than before, not a warning. On arrival, security alarms roared to full volume across the corridors. Elias looked toward the sealed door, every instinct ready for what came next. Lyra lifted her chained hands, steady now, despite everything. "Let me finish what I started," she said softly. Footsteps thundered outside, and the door began to open.